Obviously, the rumors are hot and heavy that the Big 12 will add UConn. Over the weekend, it started picking up steam that UConn was going to be added to the conference in the next week to 10 days. I don't know. We've debated the merits of UConn for many, many weeks and months on this show. And if, in fact, UConn is the first one to get an invite and actually executes that invite, if I'm a Big 12 fan, I don't know how I feel about that, because I don't think there's any doubt, as we've talked about on this show, if you add UConn, you are subsidizing their football program. You are adding UConn for basketball, almost assuredly, because when you look at Connecticut's football situation, they have a small off-campus stadium. They do not generate positive cash flow on football. This doesn't feel like a game-changing move to me, Jake, but I understand it from the perspective of, hey, this is a basketball conference trying to generate significantly more revenue in basketball.
Yeah, and I think that, not only do they want more money in basketball, I think they want to expand geographically. I think Brett Yormark has said that a number of times, and everyone took that to mean that he was going to run out into the Pacific time zone, and I still believe he will. I have no doubts about that, but I think what everyone sort of, maybe the afterthought, I guess is the right way to say it, was the East Coast. And I think, the interesting thing with UConn, obviously their football situation, but what does the deal actually look like? Like, what does UConn, have to commit to as part of getting into a P5? I mean, is there, is the conference fully going to subsidize the football side? Or is UConn going to have to commit, some of their own funds to bringing that football stadium on campus and getting a more traditional setup and doing it the way it should be done, frankly? So to me, the interesting thing, if UConn were to get or accept their invite, the interesting thing would be how the deal actually would look, because this has been the thing with, like, let's say Gonzaga the whole time.
Yes.
Gonzaga is so straightforward because they don't even offer football. It's just a basketball and everything else proposition. So really for UConn, they have a football team, but that's a basketball school. So the football, unfortunately, just complicates things. That doesn't make them a less valuable brand when you want to add them. But I just think you can't. I just have trouble seeing Brett Yormark selling to all the presidents and member institutions in the Big 12 that, yeah, we want to expand, and UConn's an easy expansion target, but yeah, we're going to have to subsidize their entire thing. We're going to have to pay their way in football. I just can't see the conference agreeing to that. I think there's some middle ground that needs to be found.
Yeah, and I also don't see a scenario where UConn would join the Big 12 as a basketball only. We were told by sources a couple of months ago that UConn's all in or they're not in at all. So you're not just going to get UConn basketball out of this. And this is very much similar to this conversation that we've had about the Pac-12 and who they would add. And you have to find the perfect candidates, in my opinion. And when I look at UConn, again, I think the issue is that football is still king in the college football world. And we can sit here and we can fantasize and we can talk about how, hey, UConn's great in basketball and we'll forget about football because they don't make money on football. There is no forgetting about football. There is no subsidizing football. If UConn's going to join the Big 12, the minimum bar has to be building an on-campus stadium that will make UConn and by extension the Big 12 money. Because if you don't do that, it just doesn't make sense. And I love that the Big 12 is weaponizing basketball revenue. I think that's hugely important. But if you're not going to make money on football and the rest of the Big 12 is going to have to suck up the losses and the lack of TV reach that UConn brings in football, I simply don't believe it's worth it. Even with the exceptional performance of UConn women's and men's basketball. Even with all of that in play, I still don't think it's worth it because football is so critical to the success and the prosperity of a Power 5 conference.
Facts.
And I love this idea that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 are building this immense basketball brand. It's meaningless if you bring in UConn and each school's having to give away several $1 million to cover those losses. I don't believe that that's the smartest way to go about this. And the other thing I would say is have yourself hold a minimum bar for excellence. If you're Brett Yormark, What is the desperation to add UConn? That's the question. Like, if you ask yourself, why would you add UConn now before you get clarity on the Pac-12 situation that we're going to talk about in a minute? But what is it about UConn right here and right now in this space and time where you're willing to take a loss on college football to get a win in college basketball? Because that math does not add up. And I just have real trouble with this for a conference and a guy in Brett Yormark who has made so few mistakes.
Right.
Really, not even one that you can clearly put your finger on. I believe adding UConn right now, before you were to have clarity on the Pac-12 situation, would be a mistake. I think that would be a leap. That would be adding somebody for the sake of adding somebody, and I don't like it at all.
Yeah, and I think that, you have to remember that Brett Yormark's only been the commissioner of this conference for, just over a year now or so? I mean, it's not like this guy's been here 10 years, and I think, it feels like he's been in the position a while because he's done so much with his conference in that time. And I think, with great success also comes great responsibility. I mean, you've knocked it out of the park to this point, but again, if you misstep, as I've said, if you add an expansion institution that really is not a great fit in the conference, just as adding a great one would benefit you, adding a poor one really hurts you. And I think, again, this balance of power between basketball and football in the Big 12 specifically, I think is really fascinating because Brett Yormark, his stated goal, his stated mission as a commissioner is to come in and be comfortable with being a disruptor and being innovative and being on the edge with things. And so that's why I say UConn makes sense for the most part, but it only makes sense if your conference isn't shelling out capital to a garbage football program. And that's why I say they're definitely going to have to bring that stadium on campus. And I think there's a chance that we may see a deal with UConn that we don't see too often. I mean, again, when you look at like Texas and Oklahoma, the only thing with Texas and Oklahoma was how the exit fee was going to work out. We didn't need to talk about stadiums and logistics. We didn't need to talk about any of that.
Yeah.
You didn't need to talk about that with USC and UCLA. So that's why I think UConn's cool and everything. But honestly, in expansion, I think the Big 12 has bigger fish to fry. So if they do add UConn, great. But I really think the expansion conversation for the Big 12 is out west. And this was more of just like hey, we want to pick up a premier basketball program or brand if we can. And to do that, we need to work out their football situation.
Yeah, and listen, I think Jim Mora and that program are very capable. I mean, the problem is you saw a significant bump in attendance at UConn football all the way up to 22,000. I said a significant – they grew their attendance by 50% to 22,000. So we can sit here and we can dream and we can talk about the one season where UConn was a legitimate program. What was that, 2000 something or whatever?
Yeah.
But this is not a football school. This football school at the top end, they're going to need at minimum a new stadium. They're going to need at minimum probably new facilities all the way around to support the football program. There's not going to be this isn't like you're joining a conference and you're winning a lotto ticket. That's not what this is by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you're no SMU with that huge oil man donor base. I should stop. But my point is that you feel like you're going to have to carry UConn for a lot of years in football. And that for that exact reason, I don't love it.
And I think that goes against the grain of where the conference is going. I mean, again, as we've said on this show many times, even the low-end football program in the Big 12 is trending in a positive direction. Now, that direction may be 3 wins, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you're moving forward, as long as you won one more game this year than you did last year, you're in a great place. And again, we can't forget, and I know it sounds silly saying this, but we can't forget you just added 4 new schools. Like, it's not as though you haven't expanded in 10 years. You just added 4 new schools. So that's why I say, yes, UConn makes sense on the basketball floor, but let's not be in a hurry to add a difficult situation with their football program. Let's make sure the deal is done right. And again, I'll just keep saying it. That's why I believe in Brett Yormark, because I don't think they would just add UConn willy-nilly because they can. I think Brett would make sure, hey, this is how it has to be. And the last thing I'd say about Brett is once again, doing media, talking about, hey, we run everything by our presidents before we do anything. So this isn't going to catch anyone in the conference off guard. This would surprise nobody.
No, I would agree with that. And I just think if whether it's, if you go back to, I don't know, Skip Holtz or Randy Edsall or, now Jim Mora, you look at these guys, these are good football men, and it's tough to build a program at UConn. And I know they put guys in the NFL, and I know people get excited about that. But I think when you're looking at value adds and you're looking at what it takes to grow a program to the level that you need to grow a program to compete in a football conference equality of the Big 12, I think you're looking at a decade. I think you are looking at a decade. That is at a minimum in my mind. All right, let's get your comments. If you're here right now, please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button. We always appreciate that. Danny Reich Jr. gives us $5 to say Colorado cannot leave before the numbers come out, but CU will be blamed when the numbers drop after they leave. The Pac would expand to 16 for the same money. Sure. I mean, if that's your opinion, I think, and we're going to talk about Colorado in a minute, but I just don't think anybody's going to blame anybody that leaves the Pac-12. If you leave the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12, you would only be doing it if the TV deal's less than $25 million.
Yeah.
So they know what the number is already. And I don't know why this has been such a hard principle for people to grasp. The schools know what the number is. There's not a matter of, hey, are we going to go or are we not? It's, hey, are you guys going to be able to get us more money? Are we going to get a better deal or are we not? They know what the number is. They know what the number is. So we'll talk about that coming up in just a bit. Chase Sleep says, sup, guys, it took UConn less than a decade to go from 1AA football to BCS, a BCS game in the 2000s. They can do it again with a financial windfall they get from joining the Big 12. What financial windfall are you thinking they're getting?
It's the other part of the conversation.
Because this isn't a lotto ticket. What financial windfall is UConn going to get, especially in football? The issue becomes, do you have the donor base to raise money to build new facilities? If you do, you need an on-campus football stadium. But the other issue is you don't have a ton of available land, and we've talked about this as well. UConn doesn't have a whole lot of empty fields on campus just waiting for a football stadium.
Right.
It's a large footprint. It is a very large footprint. And I think that's one of your biggest challenges is that you need a better football stadium situation. It can't be off campus, however far away from campus it is.
It's like 30-ish miles.
Yeah,
or so.
It's far from campus.
Yeah,
it's not a place where your students can easily get to. Like I said, you only average 22,000 fans, and that's a significant jump. But there is no financial windfall for UConn to join the Big 12. Are you thinking you're getting even if you got a full share? Is $31 million a financial windfall where you're like, yeah, let's build a new stadium?
Yeah, that's tough, bro.
Not a financial
That's
windfall.
Tough.
So I don't know where the idea that there's a financial windfall is coming from. Emma in ZZ World gives us $2 to say, obviously adding to revive the civil conflict. Go Big Red. Listen, again, this is a move for basketball. That's the only way you can spin it. You're moving for basketball. You are hoping that you can help UConn get back into football in a major way. And hey, if that happens, great. If it's going to take time and years. That's the only thing that I would say.
I mean, you look at the TV deal UConn's got. It's about $7 million a year just on a baseline before you get to, basketball tournaments and extracurriculars on top of what you're getting baseline. So, again, you're not just going to jump into the Big 12 and be at 31.7 or whatever it is. I mean, you would be, I think if you're UConn, you'd be thrilled with 15, double your revenue, right? I mean, I think you'd be thrilled with that. But again, the best point is, even at 15, that's not enough to just construct a new football stadium from, the plot of land you don't have. Like, I think that's the bigger question. Where are we building a football facility? And by the way, where are we building a football facility that's P5, capable?
But I also think the stadium you have now, what is it, Pratt & Whitney Stadium, was only built in like 2000. So that stadium's just 20 years old. Are you telling me you're just willing to walk away from that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just not an ideal football situation. That's the bottom line. And I am sure that if this story is true, and we've heard it from multiple people, that UConn is supposedly going to get an invite to the Big 12, I just don't love it. It is what it is. I mean, there's no changing it.
Yeah.
I just don't love it. John Evans says Tulane greater than UConn, but is Tulane really an option for the Big 12? I wouldn't think so. I would not think so. I would much more think that Tulane's an option, or should be an option, for the Pac-12. But I'd love to see Tulane in the Big 12. I think Tulane, New Orleans would be a great ad. I think, we've debated Tulane at length on this show.
Yeah.
Their academics would be a significant lift for the Big 12. A significant lift. Truck Stop Gumby, how are you? Jim Mora was a good coach at UCLA. Is that real? Is good coach at UCLA?
Nick Saban is a better man than you are.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say Jim Mora is. Jim Mora is a solid coach.
Yeah.
He's a solid coach.
Yeah.
But was he?
No.
Nah, bro.
No.
Nah. I think Randy Edsall did an okay job. Mora at UCLA was 46-30 and 28-25 in conference. Ooh. Yikes. His best record at UCLA overall was 10-3 in his second and third year. And they went to the Sun in the Alamo Bowl.
Just okay. Dude, the reality of the situation is the UConn football job is a transitional job.
Yeah.
You're not going to
No
UConn
doubt.
to win national championships, right? In football, right? Basketball is different, obviously, but football, it's a transitional job. And yeah, Jim Moore is solid. There's no doubt about that. He always has been solid. I feel like Jim is somebody who's not going to, disparage your university or embarrass you, but you're not going to be Ryan Day or like this top cut of coach. He's just solid. He gets the job done.
Yeah. And if you look at the coaches in recent times, like Randy Edsall to Paul Pasqualoni, Bob Diaco, back to Randy Edsall. Come on. Yeah, is UConn a destination? I think we need to be keeping it
UConn
real.
is not a destination.
Yeah, come on now. Purple Haze. Kansas tries their best to act like a football school, but to no avail. Last year was to no avail?
Yeah.
I think if you slip back into 3-win territory this year, they won't. Then you could say that. But that was a more than solid program, in my opinion.
I mean, but you see what I mean with Kansas. Kansas is a perfect example of a basketball school that is improving in football. Notice I'm not saying they're good, right? I'm not saying they're some world beater.
Sure.
But the Big 12, in my opinion, what we're seeing from their behavior is they're just trying to bring the bottom up, right? Just bring the 1-win team to 3 wins. Bring the 3-win team to 6 wins, right? Bring the 8-win team to 10 wins. That's all you're trying to do in the conference. So I think Kansas is doing fine.
Yeah, I think Kansas is fine. I wouldn't, but again, this is it just in my opinion. And again, this is just my opinion. I don't mean to speak for you. I don't know what you think, but it's a good ad. It's not a great ad. And for NCAA tournament revenue and for all of that, hey, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be something that is end of the world. It's not going to be something that's game changing. I wish I could tell you that it was. It's not.
Yeah.
It certainly is not. And I think that's just the reality of the situation. I don't know how else I don't know how else you spin it. Big Jack 512 says CU won't get a full share of the PAC deal. Grant of rights nets out on equal premium for you. Like, how do you, with all due respect, like saying that CU won't get a full share of the Pac, like, you have no idea what goes into that conversation.
Yeah.
I love this. I love that everybody is all of a sudden a conference commissioner and a university president, and you have no idea what goes. You have no idea what, like, if you ask yourself, if you're Colorado and Big Jack 512 and Houston is saying you won't get a full share of the Pac deal, what sense does that actually make? If you're Colorado, are you staying in the Pac-12 if somebody's like, yeah, we'll give you a 75% deal?
No.
You're not, at this point, you're a legacy member of the Pac-12. Why would you not get a full share of a Pac-12 deal? That makes zero sense.
Pac-10.
And if you're Colorado and you're going to the Big 12, why would you go for 75%, for 50%? Because you're going to make less money than you would in the Pac-12, so you wouldn't go.
Yeah.
It wears me out that people think, well, I mean, they're just going to the Big 12. They're going to get 50%. Why would they go? Why would they go? I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to remember the schools are going to do everything that they can do to put themselves in the best position possible. And again, the real victims here that nobody wants to talk about, and victims is probably the wrong word, but the member institutions of any of these conferences that are really going to suffer are going to be the Washington States, the low end school, athletically, that is, that's not running a good athletic department. Again, if you're $70 million in the hole, and let's say you do what Big Jack is saying and you take a 50% deal to go to the Big 12, that's not helping you get out of your financial issue or
why
hole.
would you do that?
Like, you wouldn't do that. Yeah, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So like that's why I say again, you're talking about, and you can't forget this, you're talking about schools uprooting their relationships, uprooting their situations, uprooting all their resources to go to a new conference and start over with those relationships. Now, yeah, sure, all the people still know each other, but you're not in the same conference anymore, so you can't do business.
I understand that in this world where everybody's got a Twitter account and everybody's an expert, and I'm not trying to come after you, Big Jack, but that's a pretty ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
When we don't even know what the numbers are, it's a pretty ridiculous statement that CU won't get a full share of the Pac deal.
You're casual.
And that the grant of rights nets out unequal premiums for Oregon and Washington. You have no idea if that's true or not. You have no idea if that's the case or if that's not the case. Like we need to stop doing this fantasy land. Hey, let's blow everybody up and say that Colorado's not getting a full share. Like, if you're Colorado, what sense does that make from a business perspective? Like, you would never agree to that.
Yeah.
You would never agree to that. B says they probably won't get a full share until the fourth year. Based on what? Based on what? Like, so you negotiated the contract. It would make absolutely no sense for anybody to go to a new conference from the Pac-12, to leave the Pac-12, to go to a new conference, to take a 50% share, and then in 4 years, maybe you'll be at 100%. Wouldn't you just stay in the Pac-12?
Yeah.